um, we all have our own unique story.
Hmm.
Our path, is our own unique path. No one else has been on that path. So it's important that you tell your story because your story is going to be different than anyone else's.
Yeah.
You
Welcome back to the Own Your Awkward podcast. I'm your host, Andy Vargo, and every episode we get into what has made our guests vulnerable and how they've learned how to own their awkward in order to live their best life. Stay tuned so you can hear every awkward moment in today's show. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Own Your Awkward. If you're watching, I'm sure you can see the smile on my face because I am super excited today. I say that all the time, but I love doing this. But today's guest is extremely special to me, Maria Wulf. Maria is not only an amazing and accomplished musician, she's family because she's my cousin. So who knows what's going to come out of the vault in this episode. So, Maria, thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me. I've been really excited about this.
Yeah, me too. And it's so funny because we both got on the call, and for the people, you all weren't here, but we're both like, do we mention we're cousins? Because there's just so much good stuff to talk about. So we're gonna dive right in. Maria, I know that you pay attention to what's going on, so you know how this goes because you said you've been listening to some of these shows lately. So
Mhm.
I got to know, what's the most positive thing you see out there in the world today?
Well, that's a great question, because we've gone through so many changes. We've gone from polar opposites with what's happening in the world the last few years, and one of the things that I see is with my artist community, especially here in Olympia, there's like this resurgence of activity and just joy of gathering and being together. And I think about before COVID, there's so much going on, life's busy. And I think
Right.
about times when I might have the opportunity to go see someone play, play some music or be doing their craft. And I think, I'm tired, I'll stay in, I'll catch them next time. And
Yeah.
then we went through this period of shutdown and the art just kind of stopped, at least public performances and all that.
Mhm.
And now it's happening again, and people are just so happy to go out, and it's so exhilarating to go out and support each other and just get to talk with each other. And there's just this joy of community that is out there right now, at least in our little neck of the woods here in Olympia. And I just so appreciate that. And it's something that at some point we kind of have taken for granted in the past because we didn't think it could be taken away like it literally was for, at least 2 years. And
Hmm.
so there's this gratitude for being able to, do our art, being able to support each other, going out and seeing friends. And it's just really, really nice feeling.
Yeah, I really echo that. It's, there's that whole absence makes the heart grow fonder. You don't know what you have till it's gone. All of the old adages that we've heard forever, and then all of a sudden everything's gone, and we're like, oh my gosh. And I don't even know that we really noticed how much we were missing certain things until, like you said, now you're back in the room, and it's like it was too easy to just be like, nah, I don't feel like going out tonight. Or I went to a thing last week. I don't need to do it all the time. And I was like, I don't know how, I could miss this. It's like it could be taken away so quickly for any reason outside of world pandemics that apparently happen. you know?
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. So there's this, like I said, this gratitude for the opportunities to just come together and support each other.
Now I have a question about that. So when you have re-entered this world of being back out there with a lot of the artists and people, and I'm sure there's some that you reconnected with and some new ones, have you found that having that time apart and now this new way of re-entering the scene, has that changed the dynamic in the relationships or the way people are interacting on a different level afterwards?
Mm, I'm not sure. I know one of the things that has changed is people were really proactive when the gigs and concerts all went away,
Hmm.
and there are some people who kind of design their own programs. We have Zoom and you can do
Right.
like a Facebook Live, but there are people who created these apps
Mhm.
where performers could live stream, but then it could also accept donations.
Okay.
Oh, like if you're on Facebook and they're doing, let's just say it's like a Facebook Live, you can
Right.
watch it, but then you can press a button to say, give them $10.
Oh, nice.
So these artists were able to create performance opportunities and still, sustain themselves financially.
Right.
So things like that are kind of still happening. Some
Mhm.
people are still doing, these broadcasts. I know there are musicians in New York who do broadcasts every Monday night from their apartment.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
and then they invite other musicians to perform with them. So in essence, they've created a virtual performance
Mhm.
space.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah.
yeah, it's so great because now, we could be in Washington and watch someone in New York, and they're able to expand their audience. And that's one thing that I remember saying during the time of lockdown, and related to especially restaurants or any type of business where you have a business model that's not available anymore, or a way to earn a living, and you're forced to learn another way around it and forced to
Yes.
learn how to get by. And the people who were the most creative in those situations can now come out of that situation and take the new way that they learned how to do things and bring back the old way and incorporate those two together. And now you're even stronger than you were before.
Hmm. Yeah, so I mean that's one thing that I've noticed that is new is that you might get invited to a gig, but the gig might be in someone's living room
Mhm.
rather than,
Right.
oh, it's at the coffee shop down the street.
Yeah.
So
And,
that's been interesting.
and it's interesting, like people who are following us or who get to know us, when you are in that space where they're seeing you in your living room, it's easy to forget when you're just doing your thing, but they feel like they're getting an intimate look at your life, or they're getting to know you better, or that you're letting them in. Like us watching you right now, for people who are just listening to this, Maria is sitting in her studio, and you can see the
Yes.
the planning calendar on the wall, but even more exciting, the drum set right behind her, and
Hmm.
the sound
Yeah.
panels. So it gives you that feeling of this is that space where you live and work.
Yeah. Yeah, and to add to that question, the other thing is just the live performances in people's homes, you
Mhm.
know, not even with that broadcasting element, but I just did a house concert this last weekend
Oh, wow.
um, with someone who hosts annual concerts. And that's kind of a grassroots thing because unfortunately, there are businesses that used to host live music regularly that didn't survive the pandemic,
Yeah.
unfortunately. They just had to close. Or the places that have survived, their budget is still really tight, so they can't afford to pay artists.
Yeah.
But then people will say, well, I have a grand piano in my living room and I have enough space. I'd love to host a concert,
Okay.
which I think is really wonderful because you have this patronage for the arts and it's happening in people's homes.
Yeah.
And you get that intimate setting, like at this performance this last weekend, we played and then we had our break and everyone was standing around in the kitchen
Just visiting. Yeah.
eating hors d'oeuvres, and then you get to visit with people where if you're in a large club, it's loud, you might not get to talk with the
Right.
audience.
Yeah. And also,
So that's great.
it is. And I think also to tag onto that, when you're in a venue, I think people have this hesitancy to come up and speak to the performers. Like they don't want to interrupt. I don't want to interrupt your setup or your downtime between things. I want to give you your space, and don't always realize how much you want, you enjoy that sometimes, that, oh, hey, I love this, or what is that instrument you're using over there? I've never seen one of those. And it's exciting because it shows people are interested. But when you're in that home space, that has, like you said, that just drives that.
Yeah, it's nice. Typically at a venue, people will come up and, it's loud or they don't have a lot of time. So they'll give you a compliment, which is really great.
Hmm.
And that's about it. But, at this last performance, I met someone who's currently next door neighbors with someone I used to grow up with in
Oh,
Aberdeen.
wow. Oh,
And making that connection. A lot of those connections, like different degrees of separation of people we know, or
yeah.
yeah, they can ask those deeper questions to, ask about the types of instruments we're playing, how long we played, all that. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
great.
such a fun game to play with the how are we connected? And especially when you accidentally find out, you just through a conversation, also it's like, wait, how do you know them? Or you're from there? Maybe you know so and so. And
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's cool. So Maria, you're here because it's time to pick on you, as if we didn't, have enough time growing up to pick on each other. Not that we did that a lot, but we got to know, what's that awkward thing you've had to own in order to do what you're doing today?
Sure. Well, one of the things I've really had to just break through in the last few years is kind of overcoming self-doubt, or feelings of inadequacy, especially with my desire to want to create an online presence and particularly start a YouTube channel. Which is ironic because in the community, I'm a very well-respected musician and educator, and I'm actually known nationally because of my connections. Yet for some reason, I have been just so hesitant and almost afraid to put myself out there, almost like, I'm like this timid little child. Uh, and just thoughts of, what do I have to offer that's different than anyone else? Like, what value do I bring the internet,
Wow.
which is literally the entire world? Because you think I can look and say, gosh, there's so many people teaching drum lessons online. I would just be white noise. Why, what am I going to offer? But I've heard some great things from mentors and kind of self-empowerment programs I'm a part of. And a quote that has really stuck with me was something to the extent of, don't be afraid to tell your story, because you never know who's watching and being inspired by you.
Yeah.
And that really resonated with me, because I have, you see so many people doing the same thing, yet there's someone who you connect with because their story is similar to theirs. I
Right.
know there's probably young girls out there who are wanting to play the drums and maybe are looking around and saying, well, I'm the only girl in the percussion section.
Yeah.
I
Right.
feel kind of lonely, but they say, wow, look at, there's a woman who's playing drums and she's done it her whole life. That
And
is
she's rocking
awesome.
it.
Yeah. And the other thing is, um, we all have our own unique story. Our path, is our own unique path. No one else has been on that path. So it's important that you tell your story, because your story is going to be different than anyone else's.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many comedians, but if you
Right.
told the story of how I took that step and finally, I became a comedian, or, a
Mhm.
self-help expert or motivational speaker, your story is unique to you.
Right.
And so it is really important to tell your story, because that's what you have to offer. It's
Definitely.
you. And one of my mentors said another thing that resonated. He said that if you keep your knowledge and your experiences, you keep them to yourself or in your safe little community, it's really kind of selfish,
Mm. Yeah.
because you're not sharing it, you're not letting anyone else in on what you've learned. But if you put it out there and share it with the world, whatever the opposite of selfish is, altruistic,
Right.
you know, you're enlightening the world with what you have to offer. So those kind of things really resonated with me. And then just getting, motivational talks from friends and saying, just do it. Don't try to be perfect.
Hmm.
Don't wait until you've perfected the video or your lesson. Just put it out there and start.
Yeah. And
I
people
was
want to see the
also
process.
Yeah, I was also so overwhelmed with thinking, okay, there's so many steps I have to do. How do I do that? And that's when I called my good friend, my cousin Andy.
That was, yes.
It
It's
was probably
wonderful.
about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I said, Andy, I need help.
I
I've
was.
got I've got all these goals, all these things I want to do, and I cannot for the life of me,
Mhm.
put a plan together. So that's when here's a plug for Andy.
Yeah.
So that's
And
when I called you and say, how would you like another client?
yeah.
And
And
so we
I
sat
have to tell
down.
you, that was like one of my favorite calls because it's, oh my gosh, Maria's calling me. And you're always marketing yourself and stuff, but then when it's friends and family that come to you, it's like, oh gosh, I really don't want to let this person down. Like, it's not that I ever want to let anybody down, but when it's someone you have,
You have to see me every year at the
right?
holidays
Yeah,
so I can
it's
say,
like,
I want my money back, buddy.
right? It's like, this never happened. What went wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, I really appreciated the help you gave me, which was really, we sat down and we mapped things out. You look at, okay, well, where is it you want to be? So let's look at the steps it's going to take to get there. Then let's make a schedule. Let's make a plan. Step 1, step 2, step 3. And it was a lot of work. It was like, okay, video equipment, recording equipment, who's your target audience?
how do you use all
Yeah.
this stuff?
Yeah, do all that. And so nothing else, just sitting down with someone, whether you're a professional, mentor, life coach, helping me take these steps, or just a friend saying, oh, that's a neat project, why don't you go for it?
Right. And
um yeah, and then getting over that, the biggest hurdle was just getting over my fears and
mhm,
just doing it. And it was scary. The first videos I put up were just recordings of performances I've already done. Comments turned off. I'm like,
safe,
I don't want to
stay
hear
in the
what
safe
people have to
zone,
say.
right?
And then I started to put my lesson videos up, and it has been, I could say, probably 99.999% positive experience.
That's
Um,
good.
I was really afraid of trolls.
Right.
Or the know-hows that, well, you realize you're holding the sticks wrong, and I can do that, that's not that impressive. But I was very pleasantly surprised to learn that majority of the people out there, this is at least on YouTube, and I guess my demographic that's watching my videos, they want to share positive sentiments.
That's good. Yeah.
They want to say, this has been really helpful for me, or I think this is great. And I'm slowly enabling comments.
Nice. Yeah.
And I even had someone, like a video that I eventually turned the comments on, thanked me for enabling comments because they were grateful for the opportunity to say, thank you, this video has really helped me.
Wow.
And I had other people actually request that I turn the comments on for some of the other videos, which I don't know, because sometimes it's like, I don't want to hear what you have to say.
Well, that is powerful though, because to hear that not just did they comment, but they were eager to comment and looking forward to it, and then gracious, like that you like it was important to them to give you the feedback and the good feedback.
Yeah, and I am also open to back and forth conversation. I know it's kind of awkward if you're just commenting back and forth,
Hmm.
but sometimes people will ask questions, or
Hmm.
they'll say, I'm trying it, but it's not working.
Okay.
Um, there are people who were kind of trolly,
Uh-huh.
but sometimes it's hard to read tone, and they might
Sure.
not have been trying to insult. Um, and there's some people who don't listen to the whole video, and they'll say, well, you realize it doesn't work if you do it like that. But they didn't listen to at the end of the video when I was saying, make sure you do it like this, because otherwise it doesn't work.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Things like that. But I appreciate how, there's been some enlightening conversations within the comments. And really what it has created is a community of
Yeah.
enthusiasts for what I do.
Wow.
Um,
Brilliant.
and that's really what I had to be open to, and not be afraid to, allow that to happen.
Yeah. So
And you can also just delete if a comment is really like inappropriate.
sure.
You just go boink.
Yeah, yeah. There's that point where you have to
Yeah.
decide, because any activity is helping the algorithm, so it's helping you get out there. And
Yes.
sometimes it's like, I didn't really want to get out there, so I just got this far, right? But yeah, there is that line where you, okay, do I engage? Do I not? One of the things that you mentioned though, this have that you engage and have the conversation. I know there are times where I have not commented because maybe it's already been asked or questioned in the comments or answered. Uh, but I have read the dialogue that's happened in the conversation, and it's answered something that I had on my mind where someone says this, and I'm like, oh, let me see what Maria replied. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense now, or that answers that. And so having that conversation a lot of times is it's more important than just that one person. Like you said, it's that whole community.
Yeah. And I'm starting to read books about how to facilitate these positive communities. There's a book called Superfans.
Mhm.
Um, and it talks about if you start to get kind of a legion of followers, they'll actually protect you.
Right.
And so if a
Yeah.
troll insults you, sometimes they'll step in and say, well, on the contrary, this, that.
Sure.
You
Like,
want to
yeah,
make
you
sure
didn't
that
listen to the whole video, obviously.
exactly, or you want to
Yeah.
make sure that those people aren't being appropriate, saying, well, why don't you just go.
Right. Yeah.
So, um,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
So two things I gotta jump in on here because going back to when you first called and were like, I have this vision. Me, that was so eye-opening because one thing, it was this is so cool that you're calling me. And then the flip side was, how did I not know like what your dreams and aspirations are? But I don't know that with so many of sometimes even like my siblings or close friends where it's like, oh, there's this thing they want to do, and we don't even know what's in the back of people's heads sometimes. Because,
Hmm.
I'm like looking at you thinking at the time, it's like, well, Maria's career is on fire. She's with the women's jazz organization and heading that up, and she's all over performing, and she's uh teaching at the school, and it's like there can't be room for any more things that you want to do or that you're not feeling fulfilled with, because the outside perception is, wow, just everything's there. And so when you share that there's this thing I want to do, I'm like, oh gosh, how did I not know that? And it's a
Hmm.
good reminder to pay attention to the people around us and be open to, people can have things in the back of their head or their mind that are kind of burning to get out. um,
Hmm.
and then having it, be ready to like come forward for you to say that you had that hesitancy, because I saw you the way you were describing yourself at the beginning of the video, like nationally renowned. Anytime people's like, oh yeah, Maria's like the big deal in the music industry, like this was, the commentary in the area and with people that know you, and so to hear you say, I'm nervous about doing this. And it's like, why? Like, because it's so obvious from the outside that there should be no hesitation. But with ourselves, we all create that dialogue. So I'm curious, was there a moment or a thing or something that really made you realize that disconnect between how you were perceived and how you were perceiving yourself?
Um, I don't know. That's something that I think has become more apparent to me in the last few years, and I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like I used to be a lot more confident. Um, and I think it was really something's different when you put yourself on camera on the internet, I
Right.
think,
Yes.
as opposed to, being on a stage. Maybe it's because there's a physical distance, or there's something about in real life. There's comfort in it's familiar.
Sure.
Um, but putting yourself out there, and you have made a tremendous life change in the last, I don't know how many years it's been now, five
Yeah.
years
7 years now, actually.
7 years.
Yeah.
You have put yourself in the spotlight, and that requires a tremendous amount of self-confidence. And so maybe that's it, is in the past I've always been a part of a group. You're a group on stage,
Oh, sure.
but here, what I'm doing right now, it's just me.
Wow.
um,
Yeah.
and then there's can be a lot of stuff. We can get really deep with personal things, but honestly, one of the things that had changed in me is I had gained some weight.
Mm,
And I'm not afraid to talk about this because I think we all we all fluctuate from time to time,
yeah.
but that was actually affecting my self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not feel good about the way I looked, and that actually then translated, beyond that. It's like I didn't feel as comfortable playing my music in front of people.
Wow.
I was just
Yeah.
not comfortable with myself. And so I just decided I had time during lockdown. I was really bored
Hmm.
to just prioritize my health.
Yeah.
So I changed my diet and nutrition, and I got a fitness coach
Yeah.
and was able to change my body composition to just feel healthier. And that gave a tremendous boon to my self-esteem.
Hmm.
Um, and that can really affect so many things in your life.
Oh, definitely. Eh,
Yeah. Um, I'm kind of not really answering your question,
No,
but
it
it,
is. Because I think there's sometimes when we notice that things are out of whack or out of alignment or just not feeling right. I think sometimes we look for the one thing, but then all of a sudden it's like, no, it's just kind of everything, or it's all these things are feeding into each other, and maybe some are symptoms and some are causing the symptoms and some are coping mechanisms. But like once we decide to make that change, it's like, well, now I got to clean this up, and now I got to deal
Mhm.
with that stack of stuff over there, and the space I'm
Yeah.
living in. I want to, it all kind of coordinates, I think.
Yeah. And so part of it kind of comes down to just self-love.
Right.
Loving
Yeah.
yourself and then taking care of yourself. And so that can translate into taking care of your diet, taking care of your physical health, whatnot. That doesn't even have to be in the extreme. It just means I care about myself enough to not let myself go any further. Um,
Right.
the other thing is, I think just being an artist and being a professional artist, I have a high standard for myself.
Hmm.
So I can really be in my bubble and I think, well, I'm not where I want to be. I'm still going to keep trying to improve. See,
Yeah.
I have a different perspective on where I am at than the outside world.
Sure.
So there is that disconnect.
Hmm.
The general public might see me as up here, like this upper echelon, and I see myself as, yeah, I still have a long ways to go.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to find that balance of, yes, I my goal is to always be improving. I still have goals on where I want to be in my career, but to have that perspective and take a step back and look at what I have achieved and feel good about it.
Right.
I think about if you were climbing the stairs of a pyramid and you're just looking at the steps in front of you and you're thinking another step, or you're looking up and you see so far you have to go and you think, I just am not accomplishing much. But when you take that other perspective and look behind you and you see, you're half a mile up in the air,
Yeah.
the other people see you that half a mile up and say, wow, but you
Oh,
see yourself as, I'm just still trying to go up these steps and look how far I have to go.
yeah,
So it's
that's
a
such
little
a
bit like
good
that.
visual. I love that.
Yeah. And so some people use the term perfectionism
Hmm.
as being detrimental. And I don't know. I think if they say perfectionism as something that is debilitating or prevents you from doing anything because you fear you're not perfect, for me, I might be a perfectionist in that I want to achieve perfection in what I do, but it's not at the detriment. You know, I
Hmm.
still take chances.
Yeah.
There is probably a little bit of that in my hesitancy in putting myself out there on YouTube and social media. But I also have life experience of just facing my fears, not fearing failure, and just going for it.
Right. Now, do you remember what it felt like when you actually pushed the button on uploading that first video and not just the easy video that was like, I'm comfortable with this performance because everyone applauded me, but the first one where you're like, I'm making this thing just to put on the internet. Do you remember what that
Um,
felt like?
that was probably the first lesson video, instructional video, because there's a lot of comfort I have. I feel very comfortable playing my drums
Right.
because it's my thing.
Sure.
And so the first videos I put up were just kind of performance ones to pad it. It's
Hmm.
the lesson video where it's like, well, here I go. They're either going to love it or hate it,
Right.
or just pick it apart. Um, it really is kind of like growing up at Black Lake. We were talking before we started this, our summers at Black Lake together. And
Yeah.
you really want to go swimming. You really want to go swimming, but it's that time of the year where it's cold. And
Hmm.
in about 10 minutes, it's going to feel fine, but you have to jump in first in the cold.
Yeah.
So you could either walk in with your toes or you go out to the dock, say, let's hold hands, plug our nose, and jump in.
Hmm.
So it was
Wow.
kind of like that. Well, let's just jump in. It might hurt at first, but I think then we're going to get used to it.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good way of thinking about it.
Yeah. Sorry, now I'm just picturing the lake, so my head is
Yes.
like, but
But you
that
know
is,
what I mean? When
yeah,
you know it's going to be cold, but you know, if you can just get through, I should write this down. What a great analogy.
right. Yeah,
If you get
exactly.
through that initial shock, you know, when you're going to be cold, but then you get used to it and then it's great.
Yeah,
Then
and
you're
then you're having fun and you're splashing and yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, that is a really good visual. And it's true because you have to want the other thing bad enough to deal with whatever that thing is you have to get through. So
Yeah.
to get through the cold because you know how fun it's going to be. You know that you're going to enjoy the time in the water, whatever it is you're doing. And so once that desire is big enough, or sometimes I think sometimes the fear of what's going to happen if you don't do it,
True.
like if
Yeah.
you don't make the change, you're going to be stuck in the same place. And if that's scarier to you than doing what you need to do to make the change,
Mhm.
that's where the motivation comes in.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for just there's another saying. It's from a book I can't recall right now, but every action you take is a vote for the person you want to be.
Oh, I love that.
So if I want to be a professional educator,
Hmm.
I need to do the things that a professional educator does. If I want to
Yeah.
be a YouTube content creator, here's my content.
Yeah. And that's really in line with a quote I heard uh last summer. I was driving, I was listening to Bob Proctor. He's, a huge motivation guy and talks about creating the life you want. But he said he basically said it. He said, it's really simple. You think of the life that you want, and every single thing that you do does this create that life or does it not create that life? And so, if I am expecting to be healthy and fit and run a marathon, then is this candy bar in line with that? No. And when you take it to that simple thing of, is this thing I'm doing in line with what I'm trying to do? Is watching 6 hours of TV today going to be in line with that? There's times where it's great to chill and relax because we need that time, but if it's 6 hours every day, that's not in line. So
Mhm. Yeah. The other thing I'm thinking about, I think you were asking, how did it feel? What was that
yeah,
first time? One thought is that if it all goes to pot, you just delete it.
that's fair. Oh yeah, that's true. There is some safety there in that, nothing
Yeah.
has to be forever.
Yeah. And, you know, if you follow very successful YouTube creators, if you follow their path, some of them keep every single video,
Hmm.
which I think is really great because you can go back in time
Yeah.
and you can see how they've evolved. And
Mhm.
very few of these successful creators, very few of them were awesome from the very start.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
look back and a lot of them started off like literally in their bedroom with really bad lighting
Yeah.
and a bad
Exactly.
microphone. And then as they progress, you could say, oh, they must have got a new camera for this one, or it looks like they took a course in lighting.
Yeah.
Um, and so giving yourself that grace to
Hmm.
know that, okay, this first one, it might not be perfect, but if I don't do this now, I'm not going to learn how to get better.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
you learn how to get better by doing it and making mistakes and
Yeah.
then fixing those mistakes.
And it's tricky because when you're doing that online, it's like you're choosing to be willing to make the mistake in front of everybody.
And that is scary.
Exactly. That's it. But it's also a huge feather in your cap or a huge whatever analogy you want to use to say that it's an even bigger accomplishment when you do take that step.
Yes. It's pretty exhilarating. And so then I would watch and see how many views.
Uh-huh.
and and it's really interesting. Some of my videos have really taken off. Recently, I think YouTube has been promoting my videos. One of them, my most popular one, has about 160,000 views,
Wow. That is
which is
amazing.
really hard to wrap my brain around.
Hmm.
I mean, there's videos out there where they have millions of views, but I remember when some of my videos were starting to get hundreds of views, and I was thinking,
Right.
wow,
Yeah. Like,
hundreds of people have seen this.
uh-huh. It
And
might
then when
cross over 1,000.
yeah, when it gets into thousands, like, wow. So I'm picturing a stadium with 1,000 people. And then there's
Yeah.
one video I know that YouTube is promoting because some of the comments are saying, YouTube suggested I would like this, and I'm so glad.
Oh,
And
wow.
that one, yeah, is over 150,000. And I can't even, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around that.
Right.
But it's exciting and it's affirming. And with that video, honestly, there were only two what I would consider negative comments,
Okay.
and therefore, and they were kind of ignorant comments,
Okay.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's been very affirming and very heartwarming. The people who have thanked me for putting the content up there.
Right. And I think there is that fear of the negative, and there always will be some negative because of whatever issue is going on in that person's life or their ignorance or whatever it is. Um, but the answer to me is just there's so much more positive that's going to drown it out. And all of a sudden, when you have 160,000 views, one negative comment is like, well, there's a lot of other people that don't, I'm not putting a lot of weight on that.
Exactly. And if you were doing a survey about customer response, and if it said like 99%, positive response, then it's
Right.
like, okay, I consider that a success.
Definitely. Wow. Well, what's the best way for people to support you, to go see your videos, to like, what is it that you would mean the world to you if people were, picking up drumsticks and learn how to
Sure.
drum?
Well, if they were interested in checking it out, so on YouTube, it's Maria Wulf Music. So if you just search that, and then on my website is just mariawulf.com. Those who are in the Pacific Northwest who might be interested in seeing me perform, I have my performance calendar on there.
Excellent.
Um, but yeah, if you want to like and subscribe to my channel, that would be great. Yeah, and if you have questions or if you're interested in learning drum techniques and you want a specific topic of a video, just put that in a comment. That would be really helpful because it helps me to know what people want, what kind of content.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that too, because I think sometimes we go through our days as people creating things. It's like, oh, I have this plan of what I think people are going to want to see, but it's easy to forget that, oh, you know what is it that you're looking for? Did I miss a step, or as far as explaining? Because when you're an expert drummer, you've taught enough people that you see where the things are. But
Mhm.
when we do things that we're good at, we don't always think about the little things that make a big difference. Like, wait, can you just zoom in on how you're holding that? Like, I can see it, but what does the backside of your hands look like, or whatever it could be? And it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and so on my channel, I have a combination of, I have like live videos of concerts. I have videos that I've recorded here. I don't know if you call them play along ones or drum covers. And then I have lessons, how to. My lessons get 5 times as many views as the performance videos. So that tells me people want lessons. They want to know how.
Oh,
The ones that I've titled how to dot 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 get more hits. So then that
oh, wow,
tells
okay.
me that tells me if I do how to videos or if I title them how to do this, there's more interest generated.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm not going into this saying I want to get as many subscribers and I want to monetize and make all this money. I'm
Mhm.
thinking, what do people want?
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to use those analytics to say, seems like they want more of these kind of technique videos, and I'm happy to make those.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Hmm.
Yeah. And yeah, and for everybody listening, there are links galore down below to make it easy to click on, finish the episode first, and then go click all those links, like, share, and subscribe. Because I find that there's things that we might not think are interesting, and then we meet the person or we get to know their story, and that's one of the things I love about this show is that I might not have ever thought about being a drummer, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know what? There's more to this. This is kind of fun. I might want to just even if I don't buy a drum set necessarily. Maybe I'll buy some drumsticks and play around on a pan or something. But we get more interested in things and we realize how much goes in behind the scenes.
Yeah, and there are so many things to be interested in.
Hmm.
That's why I really do love YouTube. I hope it doesn't go away.
Right.
I hope they don't change their model where people have to like subscribe to it and pay for it.
Yeah.
But you know, there are so many interests out there, and that's why I guess kind of the moral of my story, if I had to wrap things up, like what would be my final things, is really that quote of don't ever be afraid or hesitate to tell your story or that you don't have anything to offer because you never know who's going to find that connection with you and be inspired by you. We are all our unique experience and story, for lack of a better word, is what makes us unique,
Hmm. Yeah.
and valuable. And the internet goes around the entire planet, and there are so many people who share the same interests in you. And so if you put yourself out there, you're going to allow them to connect with you, and making those connections is really, really magical too.
Hmm.
I love how I've connected with people from countries all over the world.
Right. Now, one thing that makes me think about, because that kind of comes back to what you started with about this, not being afraid to share your story, and that's what makes the difference. Have you found that through your videos, you're incorporating more of your story as you go, or is that playing into it
Um,
even in subtle ways?
my story in terms of how I've learned the skill that I'm teaching.
Hmm.
And people, I think that's what makes me somewhat different than some of the other teachers and videos I've seen.
Okay.
Um, I want to say this the right way, but I've known people who are teachers of certain subjects, who have always just had a handle on the topic, and they don't understand when people struggle.
Yeah.
Some professors say, I don't understand why they can't get it. Like, I knew
Yeah.
this stuff when I was their age. But for me, I really started like knowing nothing. And I struggled and I struggled and I pushed through and I learned this and I realized, oh, the way I'm doing it is wrong, but if I rotate my wrist. And so in my videos, I'll say that. I'll talk about how I used to do this completely wrong. I used to
Mhm.
hold it like this. And when I did, it caused that. So then I realized that if I rotate this way, it really helps.
Okay.
And people have commented on those specific things, like, I was doing what you were doing before. So I'm
Uh-huh.
glad you pointed that out.
Yeah.
A lot of times the lessons are like, this is how you do it, and everything is awesome. So I'm not afraid to say, this is how bad I used to be.
Mhm. Right.
So when I started to practice it like this, that's how I got better.
Well, and those are the things that I think make the biggest difference because you're sharing you're sharing what you learned, and that's the best part of
Exactly.
teaching. I mean, the way you just described that with like certain professors and certain subjects, it just reminds me of when, my son was in second grade and trying to learn how to read, and he had some learning things at play.
Mhm.
And I remember just saying to my future ex-wife, like, I don't know how to help him because I didn't have these problems, and not in a way that he's awful, but just that
Yeah.
I didn't have to learn this the same way that he's going to have to learn it. So I don't know what tips to give him because that's not something that I ever did. Now there's things now he teaches me that I never learned because he's an adult now, and it's like he's teaching me, how to go out and shoot a gun and stuff. And I'm just like, I never learned that. But when you actually can say, well, this is the things I tripped up on, and look out, there's a rock there, and I'm telling you that because I tripped on it last time, then that's where people
Yes.
are like, oh, I got to look down.
Yeah, and I think it's a way, like, if you're teaching anyone anything, you immediately can connect with your audience. It humanizes you
Hmm.
rather than being like this perfect robot.
Right. Yeah.
And then they can maybe even trust you that much more, or trust that you can actually help them where they're at versus, well, this person is just perfect, and I can't keep up with that.
Hmm. Yeah. I've that's something I struggled with as I was getting going, was I thought every video had to be perfectly rehearsed, And even though my brand is awkward, I'm like, I'm not trying to be that perfect thing, but I still feel like, well, there should be a certain level of, oh my gosh, my
Mhm.
hair was off, and did they see this? And forgot to wash my glasses. And you pick apart every little thing, and pretty soon, if everything is so polished, people can't even think, well, I'll never get to that. But if it's a situation where you're like, oh, you know what? Someone, forgot to, I don't know, I always turn the wrong burner on, which is kind of scary, but it's like someone else does that too, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a very good question. And yeah, I think that that might be one of the things that makes me a little unique from maybe some of the other instructional videos
Hmm.
out there.
I love it.
Another thing I thought of, we were talking about, wanting things to be perfect. I want my video to be perfect, before I post it. And I was given a lecture at Central Washington University earlier this year at their Women in Jazz Day. And I was talking about not fearing failure, like embracing
Oh,
failure,
yeah.
because they're learning opportunities. How are
Hmm.
you going to know how to get better if you don't do it wrong?
Right.
Kind of thing. And someone, one of the music students was saying he really wants to put together a group and he wants to play, but he feels like he's not ready. And I was saying, well, what do you fear? What's the worst thing that can happen? And he said he doesn't want to he's afraid if he makes a bad first impression, then he's ruined. His
Oh,
reputation
yeah.
is
No
ruined.
one will
Everyone's going to
ever,
say,
yeah.
well, this guy can't play. And I was, I can understand that, but there's also giving yourself the opportunity to improve and then show the world, yeah, but I'm getting better. Yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
getting better. And I think that's one of the things I did fear with my first videos. You're asking, how did you feel? My thoughts were my first impression, people who are seeing me for the very first time, maybe that's going to get ingrained.
Yeah.
But you have to trust that, you know what? If you just keep putting better videos, they're not going to remember the first one they saw. They're going to remember the one that excited them the most, or
Hmm.
maybe that looked the best.
Yeah.
Someone made a comment about my channel saying your videos are looking better and better, you
Oh,
know,
wow. Okay.
and I said, yeah, it's definitely been a learning process.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
yeah, if
And
I look at my videos, they are, you figure out how to do the lighting better, or you get a little bit,
right.
nicer equipment. So
Yeah. And that's just a whole thing where I like to think that the people who are watching, because that shows that not just did they watch your one video, that they've watched several, they're watching along. And it makes it, like you said, you're building this community. So they're like, oh, have you seen Maria's new studio? Or did you notice she put new soundboards up in the back? Or did you notice, whatever X, Y, or Z thing that you've changed? And they feel like they're part of it because they've been there. They're like, when you meet someone, they're talking about some podcast they listen to or some show they watch, and they're like, well, I used to watch it back when, and they started telling me
yes.
about, the guys were in their garage and they were doing this, and they only had a 20-minute window or whatever, because those fans are proud of how long they've been a part of what you're doing.
They're the true fans.
Yeah,
They're not just the fair weather fans.
exactly.
Like Seahawk fans who've been with them the whole time.
That's me. I am I'm not huge on sports, but I'm a when there's food at the party, I'm watching the game. I do think before we go, uh, people are going to be disappointed if we don't at least hear what one of your favorite childhood memories might be from hanging out.
Oh boy. Okay. I don't know
Throw
if
you
this
for a quiz. I
I
don't
can
ask
I can
anybody
have
else
some
that.
I can tell some bad ones, Andy. I've
Uh-oh.
got a beef to pick with you about one Thanksgiving, but that'll be
Oh.
another thing.
Uh-oh.
You and John teamed up on me, and boy. But
Uh-oh.
here's one. Now this is interesting. So Dave Matthews has that line in his song "Playing Under the Table and Dreaming," or just
Uh-huh.
under the. And I think about how you and I have so memories of you and I on the ground because we were the youngest,
Yeah. Out of 13
youngest of
cousins.
six. You were
Yeah.
the youngest of seven. So we were paired up. We would play together.
Uh-huh.
We were always like on the ground under things.
Uh-huh.
Grandma and Grandpa's house.
Well, and the
small
houses were so crowded,
house.
sometimes that was the only place to retreat
So
to.
we would play. I have those memories burned in my brain. We would play under the table with our little cars and trucks
Uh-huh.
and under desks and things, or we'd split up.
Yeah.
I don't know why we call them offices, but your office was under the desk. My office was under the table.
That's funny.
But
Yeah.
I have a lot of fond memories of our family gatherings, but I remember you and I, we were just seemed to be always on the ground,
Yeah.
crawling around under tables. But I think of that when I hear Dave Matthews Band sing that. I really
I'm
do.
gonna have to go listen to that. Yeah, that's
And
a
it's
great.
just a quick line. I don't know if it's playing, but it's playing under the table and dreaming.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's funny how we could all listen to the same song, and any combination of part of a line will just resonate with different people based on, and that's the beauty of music, right? It's just it hits you differently based on where your life has been.
Hmm.
So, yes, I have so many fond memories of same things and being at the lake, and I always loved, coming to the Aberdeen house because it's just like
It's huge.
huge, and it was, it had two sides that were, matching, and
Yeah,
yeah, that was, you go up one stairway on one side and come down the other, and yeah, there's so
pretty
much.
fun.
I'm gonna have to find out about this bone to pick you have with things.
We'll talk off camera.
Uh-oh. Okay, teaser. That's awesome. Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to make sure that you leave our audience with? I know you did a nice little summary earlier. Any last advice or challenges people could do to own their awkward before we go?
Just go for it. Just plug your nose and jump into that cold water because you're going to get used to it pretty darn fast.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it. Well, Maria, thank you so, so very much for everything. I appreciate you coming to me to help get you to where you're at. And it means a lot when someone opens up and shares where they want to go. That's not anything I take lightly. And it's been fun and challenging and cool just to see you piece it all together, because you didn't waste any time just making it happen. And it was like, wow, this is with other things going on in life, like we all have, where it's like, you know what, this week this is getting pushed back because this came up and whatever. And yet it's hard to believe that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, you just got to start doing it. And it really does help whether it's a professional life coach or just a friend. When you talk about it, it starts to become a reality.
Yeah.
Just start doing it. If you want to be a professional, whatever, just start doing what a professional whatever does. Dress appropriately, make those connections,
Mm-hmm.
do pretend anything, just go for it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. Everybody else, be sure that once you go follow all of Maria's stuff and watch her videos and pick up a pair of drumsticks for fun and see where you take it, then go out and own your awkward.
Right. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you so much for listening in for today's show. Be sure to visit awkwardcareer.com to continue your journey. And of course, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends so they can find their awkward side and learn how to own it.